I realized money was being used to keep me compliant, not secure. The email arrived at 11:38 p.m. on a Thursday, and I only opened it because I couldn't sleep. Subject line, RE, Trust Distribution Authorization, Action Required. My financial advisor, Gregory Steinberg, never sent emails this late. I clicked it open, expecting some mundane form to sign, maybe a quarterly report. Instead, I found a forwarded message chain I was never supposed to see. The original sender was my father, Lawrence Whitmore III. The date was 3 weeks after my college graduation. Increase monthly distribution to $8,500, he'd written. He's showing interest in that nonprofit position. We need to make the consulting offer more attractive. Use the usual psychological framework we discussed with Dr. Pemberton. I read it 4 times. Then I searched my inbox for every email Gregory had ever sent me. It took 20 minutes to find the pattern, and when I did, my hands went completely numb. I'd been living what I thought was my own life for 8 years. 29 years old, Georgetown business degree, a comfortable apartment in Alexandria, a job at my father's commercial real estate firm that paid $180,000 annually plus bonuses, a Range Rover that came with the position, and a trust fund that deposited $8,500 into my account every month like clockwork. My college friends called me lucky. My girlfriend, Natalie Reeves, said I was blessed with opportunity. I called it the natural result of being born into the Whitmore family, 3rd generation of Washington, D.C. Real estate developers worth somewhere north of $300 million. What I didn't call it, what I never thought to call it, was a cage made of cashmere and capital gains. The email chain Gregory accidentally forwarded contained 18 months of correspondence. My father discussing my trajectory management with my therapist. My mother, Catherine, weighing in on my relationship choices with clinical detachment. References to compliance metrics and behavioral modification through strategic resource allocation. They talked about me like I was a corporate acquisition, like I was a project with quarterly benchmarks and performance reviews. I sat on my leather couch, the one my mother had chosen and had delivered as a housewarming gift when I moved in, and opened my laptop. I started with the trust documents, the ones I'd signed at 21 without reading because the lawyers have it handled, son. 400 pages of legal language I'd never bothered to decode. It took until 3 a.m, but I found it. Clause 7.3, subsection B. Trustees reserve the right to adjust distribution amounts, timing, and conditions based on beneficiary compliance with family advancement objectives as determined by the primary trustee. Primary trustee, Lawrence Whitmore III, my father. Every dollar I'd received since turning 21 had been conditional. Every payment carefully calibrated. Every increase or decrease a response to my behavior, my choices, my compliance with a life plan I'd never agreed to. The consulting job offer I'd turned down when I was 22 to work at the family firm. My trust distribution had jumped from $4,200 to $7,000 that month. The girl I'd dated junior year, the art student from a middle-class family in Ohio. My August payment that year had been $3,100 instead of the usual $4,800, with a note about unexpected portfolio volatility. I'd broken up with her in September, telling myself long distance wouldn't work anyway. My distribution went back to normal in October. I pulled up my bank statements, spreadsheet after spreadsheet going back 8 years. The pattern was undeniable once I knew to look for it. When I'd mentioned wanting to do a service year abroad, distribution dropped. When I'd accepted the VP position at my father's firm, distribution increased and a performance bonus appeared. When I'd started seriously dating Natalie, whose father was a federal circuit judge, sudden investment dividend of $15,000 and a pre-approved loan for the engagement ring I'd bought last month. I'd proposed to Natalie 3 weeks ago. She'd said yes on a beach in Nantucket, under a sunset that cost me $8,000 in travel expenses I could suddenly afford because my October distribution had been $12,300 instead of the usual $8,500. I'd thought I was building my own life. I'd thought every choice was mine. The apartment I loved, the career trajectory I was proud of, the woman I was planning to marry, the therapist who'd helped me work through my fear of commitment last year. All of it had been gently, precisely, expensively guided. They'd used money the way a good sheepdog uses pressure. Never forceful enough to rebel against, always present enough to influence direction. The rage came in waves. I wasn't angry about the money itself. I'd grown up wealthy. I understood privilege. What made my vision blur and my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe was the manipulation, the surgical precision of it. The fact that my own therapist, Dr. Amanda Pemberton, had been reporting to my father. The fact that every spontaneous gift, every timely bonus, every financial cushion that had appeared exactly when I needed it had been calculated. They'd studied me, behaviorally conditioned me, trained me like you'd train a dog, except with deposits instead of treats. I thought about Natalie, asleep in our bed down the hall. Did she know? Was she part of it? Her father's judicial connections would be useful for the firm's zoning battles. Her mother sat on the board of 3 charities my mother chaired. I'd met Natalie at a firm networking event my father had insisted I attend. You need to expand your social circle, son. Meet people from the right backgrounds. I'd thought it was chance. Serendipity. Love at first sight across a crowded room full of DC's professional elite. Friday morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. I drove to a coffee shop in Bethesda I'd never been to before, paid cash, and sat in the corner with my laptop. I needed to think clearly, and I couldn't do that in an apartment my parents owned, sitting on furniture they'd chosen, eating food purchased with money they controlled. I started documenting everything. Every email, every bank statement, every correlation between my life choices and my trust distributions. I created a timeline. 21 years old, graduation, first apartment, $4,200 monthly, stable. 22, considered non-profit work. Dropped to $3,800 for 4 months until I accepted the analyst position at Whitmore Development. 23, dated the Ohio artist, significant reduction. 24, promoted to associate, significant increase. 25, expressed interest in an MBA program in California, dropped to $5,100. 26, abandoned MBA plans, committed to staying in D.C., jumped to $7,500. The graph was damning. Every deviation from their plan met with financial pressure. Every compliance met with financial reward. I'd been Pavlov's dog in a Brooks Brothers suit. At noon, I called Gregory Steinberg's direct line. He answered on the second ring, his voice careful. "Michael, I was going to call you. About last night's email. How long have you been reporting my financial behavior to my father?" I asked. Silence. Then, "I think we should meet in person to discuss this." "How long, Gregory?" More silence. "Since you turned 21. It's in the trustee agreement. I'm required to provide quarterly reports on distribution utilization, spending patterns, and any financial decisions that might indicate behavioral shifts. You've been spying on me for 8 years. I've been administering your trust according to its legal structure," he said, and I could hear him shifting into protective corporate mode. "Everything I've done has been documented and within my fiduciary obligations. Did you know about Dr. Pemberton? About my therapy sessions being reported to my father?" His pause told me everything. "I'm not at liberty to discuss other professional relationships." I hung up. The betrayal of the therapist hit differently than the money. I'd sat in Dr. Pemberton's office every Wednesday at 6 p.m. for the past 14 months, working through what I thought were my issues. Commitment anxiety, difficulty with vulnerability, tendency to avoid confrontation. She'd been so helpful, so insightful, guiding me toward conclusions that I now realized weren't mine at all. "Have you considered that your reluctance to settle down might stem from fear of losing your independence?" she'd asked 6 months ago. "Maybe choosing a partner who understands your professional obligations would give you the stability you need to grow." 2 weeks later, my father had casually suggested I bring Natalie to a family dinner. "She seems like a grounded woman. Good family. Your mother likes her." I'd felt seen, understood, supported in my growth. What I'd actually been was managed. I pulled up Dr. Pemberton's profile on the Psychology Today website. Georgetown Medical Center, 23 years in practice, specializes in family systems therapy and adjustment counseling for high-net-worth individuals. Client testimonials praised her discretion and understanding of unique family dynamics. I'd found her through a recommendation from my mother. "You've seemed stressed lately, darling. I know someone excellent, very experienced with people in our circles." I spent Friday afternoon in the coffee shop, drinking cup after cup of black coffee until my hands shook, building my case. Because that's what this was now. A case. Evidence of psychological manipulation, financial coercion, and professional ethics violations. I had the emails. I had the bank statements. I had 8 years of documented behavior modification. What I didn't have was anyone I could trust. My family was the perpetrator. My financial advisor was complicit. My therapist was an informant. My fiancé was a variable I couldn't calculate. My friends were mostly people I'd met through work or family connections. My entire support system existed within a web my parents had spun. At 4 p.m., I called an attorney I found through an online search, someone with no connection to my family or their network. Her name was Rebecca Calderon, and her website said she specialized in trust litigation and family wealth disputes. She could see me Monday morning. Saturday, I acted normal. I had brunch with Natalie, kissed her goodbye when she left for her book club, and told her I loved her. I meant it, and that made it worse. Because I didn't know if she loved me or the version of me my parents had created. I didn't know if anything in my life was real. That afternoon, my father called. "Your mother and I are having dinner at the club tomorrow, 6 o'clock. We'd like you and Natalie to join us." His tone was pleasant, expectant. The same tone he'd used my whole life when extending invitations that weren't really optional. "I'll check with Natalie," I said. "Excellent. Jacket required. Oh, and son? Gregory mentioned you've been reviewing some trust documents. Nothing to worry about. We can discuss any questions over dinner if you'd like. Your mother and I believe in transparency." The threat was subtle, but clear. They knew I knew. The dinner was a power move, a reminder that we'd handle this as a family, which meant on their terms, in their space, according to their rules. Sunday morning, I told Natalie I wasn't feeling well and suggested she go to the club dinner without me. She pressed her hand to my forehead, concerned. "You've been off all weekend. Should I cancel? I can stay with you." No. Your parents are expecting you. My mom will want to discuss the wedding planning anyway. I'll just rest." She kissed my forehead and left at 5:30 in a navy dress my mother had complimented last month. I watched her drive away in the BMW her parents had given her for law school graduation, and I wondered if her life had been managed too, if maybe we were both puppets who'd been positioned to dance together. At 6:15, alone in the apartment, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my father's desk drawer. He kept a small office space in my apartment for when he worked from our side of town, which I now recognized as another monitoring strategy. The drawer was locked, but the key was in his golf trophy on the shelf, exactly where wealthy men always hide things they think are secret. Inside, I found a folder labeled Michael, Life Plan 2016 to 2026. The folder was organized with the same efficiency my father brought to his commercial developments. Tabs for education, career, relationships, residence, and social integration. Under education, Georgetown, family legacy, networking opportunities, acceptable deviation from Harvard. Under career, Whitmore Development FIV-P track, timeline to partner by age 35. Under relationships, a short list of 5 acceptable candidates, including Natalie. Each woman had a profile, family background, education, professional trajectory, social connections, psychological assessment. Natalie's profile noted judicial connections, stable temperament, appropriate social presentation, likely to support traditional family structure. There was a rating system. She'd scored highest. Under residence, my current apartment, purchased through a Shell LLC my father controlled, to be gifted to me upon marriage, to encourage settlement and family planning. Every detail of my life for the past decade existed in this folder. Every goal, every milestone, every relationship, every decision I thought I'd made freely. There were even contingency plans. If Michael resists VP promotion, reduce distributions, increase expense pressures, schedule consultation with Dr. Pemberton to address authority issues. I photographed every page. 93 photos on my iPhone, documenting a conspiracy against my autonomy that had been planned with the same care my father gave to his most valuable developments. The last page was a timeline. 2026, engagement to approved candidate, promotion to VP, lease to own conversion on approved residence. 2027, marriage, company shares transfer, first child planning discussions. 2028, partnership track initiation, family integration complete. I was on schedule. 3 months ahead, actually. I'd proposed in October. They'd planned for January. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. I'd been a project, a 10-year development plan, and I'd performed beautifully. Monday morning, I sat in Rebecca Calderon's office and watched her face change as she reviewed the documents I'd brought. She was 48, according to her website, with 18 years of experience in trust law and family wealth litigation. She wore glasses that sat low on her nose and made notes in precise handwriting as she read. After 20 minutes, she looked up. Mr. Whitmore, I need to be clear about what we're dealing with here. Your trust is legally structured to allow this kind of conditional distribution. The psychological manipulation, the coordination with medical professionals. That's ethically problematic, potentially grounds for several complaints, but proving legal wrongdoing is complex. I'm not interested in proving wrongdoing, I said. I want out. Out of the trust? Out of everything. The trust, the job, the apartment they own, the whole infrastructure of control. I want to know what I'm entitled to independently and how to claim it without their interference. Rebecca pulled up the trust documents on her computer. You're the beneficiary of a $4.2 million trust fund. Under the current structure, you have no direct access to the principal until you're 40, and even then, only under specific conditions. Marriage to an appropriate partner, stable employment in family-approved industry, and demonstrated financial responsibility. All subjective terms your father, as trustee, gets to define. What if I walk away from all of it? Then you get nothing. The trust has provisions that allow for complete distribution denial if you're deemed to be acting against family interests or engaging in behavior that threatens family reputation. You could contest the trust structure, argue undue influence or psychological duress, but that's a multi-year legal battle against a family with extensive resources and excellent attorneys. You'd be fighting from a position of no income, no resources, and significant personal exposure. They've thought of everything. Wealthy families usually do. She leaned back in her chair. I need to ask you something personal. Your fiancée. Does she know? I don't think so, but I don't know what I think anymore. Her profile was in my father's folder. She was selected. Selected or coincidentally compatible? Does it matter? Rebecca considered this. Actually, yes. If she's a co-conspirator, that's one set of legal implications. If she's another victim of their manipulation, that's different. If she genuinely loves you independent of your family's influence, that's something else entirely. I thought about Natalie's face when I'd proposed. The tears, the surprise, the joy. Had any of it been real? I need to talk to her. Not yet, Rebecca said firmly. Not until we know what we're dealing with. If she's been in communication with your parents about this, anything you tell her goes straight to them. We need to secure your position first. Over the next week, Rebecca and I built a strategy. She contacted 2 of her colleagues, David Kim, a forensic accountant who specialized in trust fund investigations, and Dr. Richard Blackwell, a psychologist who testified in cases involving psychological manipulation and coercive control. We needed to document not just what had been done, but the psychological impact it had had. Dr. Blackwell interviewed me for 6 hours over 3 sessions. He asked about my decision-making processes, my sense of autonomy, my relationship patterns, my career choices. At the end of the 3rd session, he delivered his assessment in clinical terms that made my stomach turn. You display classic symptoms of complex psychological conditioning. Your decision-making framework has been systematically shaped to align with external reward structures rather than internal values. You exhibit hypervigilance regarding parental approval, demonstrate difficulty identifying independent preferences, and show signs of learned helplessness when contemplating deviation from established patterns. In clinical terms, Mr. Whitmore, you've been subjected to a sophisticated long-term program of behavioral modification that would qualify as psychological abuse in most therapeutic frameworks. David Kim's findings were equally damning. He traced every trust distribution back to behavioral triggers. He found email chains between my father and Gregory Steinberg discussing incentive timing and pressure point optimization. He discovered that my therapist, Dr. Pemberton, had been paid $25,000 annually as a family consultant on top of my session fees. He found evidence that my apartment's rent had been deliberately inflated on paper to create a sense of expense I couldn't afford without family support. The Range Rover I drove? Leased through a company my father owned, with payments I thought I was making actually being rebated back to me through trust distribution increases. I was living in a closed loop where every dollar came from them and every expense went back to them. I had the illusion of independence without any of the reality. Wednesday, 2 weeks after the email that started everything, I went to work like normal. I sat through a development meeting where my father presented plans for a new commercial complex in Fairfax. I nodded at appropriate times, made strategic suggestions, played the role of engaged VP. After the meeting, he asked me to stay back. "You've been quiet lately, son. Everything all right?" "Just focused," I said. "Thinking about the wedding planning, the promotion timeline. A lot to consider." He smiled, satisfied. "That's good. That's exactly the kind of thoughtful approach that's going to make you an excellent partner. Your mother and I are very proud of how you've matured." I looked at my father, 61 years old, silver hair, custom suit, the face I'd looked up to my entire life, and felt nothing but cold assessment. He believed he'd won, believed I was successfully integrated, properly controlled, completely compliant. He had no idea I'd already transferred every document to Rebecca's secure server, that Dr. Blackwell had completed his evaluation, that David Kim had built a forensic timeline of financial manipulation that spanned 8 years. That night, Natalie asked me to set a wedding date. We were sitting on the couch, her feet in my lap, wedding magazines spread across the coffee table. "I was thinking, June," she said. "Garden wedding at your parents' club. Your mom has already started talking to the event coordinator about availability. That's 7 months away. I know it's quick, but your dad mentioned it would be good timing with the partnership track announcements." My dad mentioned. Not "I want" or "we should," but my dad mentioned. I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to see past my paranoia and my anger to whatever truth existed. "Natalie, why did you say yes when I proposed?" She laughed, surprised. "Because I love you. Because you're brilliant and kind and you make me happy. Why would you ask that? Do you ever feel like our relationship moved fast? Like maybe someone encouraged it?" Her expression shifted. "Your mom did introduce us, and she's been very involved in our relationship, but I thought that was just her being close to you, wanting to be part of your life. What if I told you I wanted to leave the firm, move somewhere else, start over?" Natalie's face went carefully neutral. "That's a big change. Have you talked to your father?" "I'm asking what you would think, independently." She pulled her feet back, sat up straight. I think it would be complicated. Your career is at Whitmore Development. Your family is here. Our entire life is built around this community. Starting over would mean giving up a lot. Would you come with me if I did?" The pause was too long. "Michael, I don't understand where this is coming from. Is something wrong? I'm just trying to understand what's mine and what's theirs." "What do you mean?" I almost told her everything. Almost laid out the whole conspiracy, the manipulation, the folder with her profile and rating system. But something in her tone, the way she'd said complicated and giving up a lot, made me hesitate. "Nothing. Wedding stress. Forget I asked." She smiled, relieved, and kissed me. "June wedding at the club. I'll start calling vendors tomorrow." Thursday morning, Rebecca called me with news. Dr. Pemberton returned my inquiry. She's claiming patient confidentiality and refusing to confirm or deny the consulting relationship with your father. But her lawyers contacted me within 3 hours, which tells me she knows she's exposed. Can we use that? We can file a complaint with the state licensing board for ethical violations. Therapist-patient confidentiality doesn't extend to situations where the therapist is receiving payment from a third party to influence the patient's decisions. If we can prove she was reporting your sessions to your father and providing strategic advice on managing your behavior, that's a violation of her professional ethics code. Do it. Michael, before we proceed, I need you to understand the implications. Once we file these complaints, once we start legal action, there's no going back. Your family will fight this with everything they have. You'll be publicly accusing your parents of psychological abuse and financial coercion. Your professional reputation could be damaged. Your relationship with Natalie will likely end. You could lose everything. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. I thought about the folder in my father's desk, the 10-year plan, the rated list of acceptable wives, the contingency strategies for forcing my compliance. I've already lost everything, I said. I just didn't know it until 2 weeks ago. The person I thought I was doesn't exist. My career isn't mine. My apartment isn't mine. My relationship might not even be mine. I'm 29 years old, and I've never made a single independent choice. Everything has been carefully managed and financially enforced. So yes, file the complaints. Start the process. I want out. All right, Rebecca said. Then we need to prepare for war. The next week moved like a fever dream. David Kim filed a detailed report with the State Bar Association outlining Gregory Steinberg's ethical violations in trust administration. Rebecca submitted a formal complaint against Dr. Pemberton to the Virginia Board of Psychology. I met with Dr. Blackwell for a final session where he recorded a video testimony detailing the psychological impact of long-term behavioral conditioning. And on Friday afternoon, I walked into my father's office at Whitmore Development and placed a letter on his desk. "What's this?" he asked, barely looking up from his computer. "My resignation, effective immediately." Now I had his attention. He picked up the letter, skimmed it, and his face went still. "You're quitting." "Yes." "May I ask why?" "Because you don't actually employ me. You control me. There's a difference." His expression hardened. "I think you should sit down. We need to talk about this rationally." "I am being rational. I've been reviewing my trust documents, my employment contract, my entire financial structure. I've consulted with attorneys and forensic accountants. I know about the behavioral modification plan. I know about the coordination with Dr. Pemberton. I know about the folder in your desk with the 10-year life plan you created for me. I know all of it." My father stood slowly, his face unreadable. "Who have you been talking to?" "Independent legal counsel." "I see." He walked to his office door, closed it carefully, and returned to his desk. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more calculated. "Let me explain something to you, son. Everything we've done has been for your benefit. You were directionless, unfocused. We gave you structure. We helped you build a successful life. You built a successful prison. We gave you opportunities most people would kill for. Opportunities aren't opportunities when they come with invisible strings. You didn't guide me, Dad. You manipulated me. Psychologically, financially, systematically. You treated me like a development project instead of a person." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you're going to what exactly? Walk away? Start over with nothing? You have no money that isn't tied to the trust. No job experience outside this firm. No references that don't come from me. You'll last 6 months before you come crawling back." "Maybe. But they'll be my 6 months. My choices, my failures, my life." "And Natalie? You think she's going to follow you into poverty? She's a practical woman. She understands what's valuable." The way he said it made my blood go cold. "You've talked to her about this?" "I've had conversations with her father, about family expectations, about the kind of future we're all building together. She understands the bigger picture. She's part of it. She's a smart woman who knows a good opportunity when she sees one, just like you used to be." I stood. "I'm done. Michael, if you walk out of this office, if you pursue this legal fantasy your new attorneys have sold you, I will destroy you. I will make sure every professional contact in this city knows you're unstable, unreliable, and ungrateful. I will tie up your trust in litigation for decades. You won't see a penny." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not asking for the money. I'm walking away from all of it. The trust, the apartment, the car, the job, the whole package. You want control? You can keep it, but you can't keep me. You're being incredibly foolish. I'm being free. There's a difference." I walked to the door. "Oh, and Dad? The complaint against Dr. Pemberton goes to the licensing board on Monday. The report on Gregory's ethical violations is already filed. Your 10-year plan, all the emails, all the documentation, it's all in the hands of my attorneys. You wanted transparency? You're about to get it." His face went white. "You're bluffing." "I'm not. And you know what the worst part is? You actually think you did nothing wrong. You genuinely believe that controlling every aspect of my life was good parenting. That's not love, Dad. That's ownership. And I'm done being owned." I left his office, walked past my mother who was coming in for a meeting, and drove the Range Rover back to the apartment one last time. I packed a single suitcase with clothes and my laptop. Everything else, the furniture, the kitchen equipment, the artwork, the expensive watch my father had given me for my 25th birthday, I left. It was all contaminated. all purchased with compliance money, all chosen by them, all part of the infrastructure of control. Natalie came home while I was packing. Michael, what are you doing? Leaving. Leaving? What do you mean leaving? We live here. You can stay. The apartment is owned by my family anyway. I'm sure they'll let you keep it. Her face crumpled. What happened? Did you talk to your father? I did. He confirmed what I suspected. You've been reporting to him. You and your family, you're all part of this. Part of what? Michael, you're not making sense. Are you having some kind of breakdown? No. For the first time in 8 years, I'm actually thinking clearly. She grabbed my arm. Please slow down. Talk to me. Whatever's going on, we can work through it. I looked at her hand on my arm and gently removed it. Did you love me? At any point. Was any of it real? Tears started falling. Of course I love you. I love you so much. Did my father ask your father to encourage our relationship? She froze. That's not... Families talk. They make introductions. That doesn't mean... Did he or didn't he? Your father thought we'd be compatible. My father agreed. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. You knew. Knew what? That it was arranged. That I was being managed. You knew, and you went along with it. It wasn't arranged. Michael. It was encouraged. There's a difference. People introduce each other all the time. That doesn't make our relationship fake. Did you know about the trust fund conditions? About the payments to my therapist? About the behavioral modification plan? She was crying fully now. I knew your family had expectations. I knew there were financial structures in place, but I didn't know details. And I didn't care because I love you. Because I thought we were building something together. We were building what they designed. The wedding next June, the partnership track, the family integration plan. It's all been scripted. We're actors who learned our lines so well, we thought we wrote them. I picked up my suitcase. Natalie blocked the door. Don't do this, please. Whatever your father did, whatever mistakes were made, we can work through it. I'll talk to him. We'll set boundaries. We'll build our own life. With what money, Natalie? With what resources? Everything I have comes from them. Every dollar, every opportunity, every connection. If I stay, I'm theirs forever. And so are you. Then we'll leave together. We'll start over. I don't care about the money. You said it would be complicated to leave. You said we'd be giving up a lot. That was last week before you knew I was serious. She had no answer for that. I moved past her to the door. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I think you probably do love me, but you love the version they created. The compliant son with the trust fund and the VP position and the country club membership. I don't know who I am without all that, and until I figure it out, I can't be with anyone. Michael, please. Goodbye, Natalie. I walked out of the apartment where I'd lived for 3 years, got into the Range Rover I'd driven for 18 months and drove to a budget rental car place in Arlington. I turned in the Range Rover, my father could figure out how to retrieve it, rented a basic sedan with the $2,300 I had in my personal checking account, and drove to a motel near Reagan National. $79 a night. No room service, no memory foam mattress, no anything. It was perfect. Monday morning, Rebecca filed the formal legal complaint. Not against the trust. That would be a long, expensive battle I couldn't afford. Instead, we filed a comprehensive ethics complaint against Dr. Amanda Pemberton with the Virginia Board of Psychology, documenting her financial relationship with my father and her role in the behavioral modification plan. We filed a separate complaint against Gregory Steinberg with the State Bar Association for violating fiduciary duty and client confidentiality in his trust administration. And we sent a formal cease and desist letter to my parents, demanding they stop any and all communication with me and warning that any attempt to interfere with my employment, housing, or personal relationships would result in additional legal action. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My father's attorney called Rebecca within 2 hours, threatening countersuits for defamation and theft of confidential family documents. My mother called my phone 37 times in one afternoon until I blocked her number. Natalie sent a series of texts that started pleading, turned angry, and ended with, "Your father is right. You're having a breakdown. I hope you get help." The firm sent a termination letter confirming my resignation and noting that all company property, including my laptop, phone, and building access card, must be returned immediately. I'd anticipated that. I'd photographed everything relevant and returned the equipment with a smile. Tuesday morning, the Washington Post ran a story. Someone had leaked the ethics complaints, probably someone from the licensing boards who recognized the Whitmore name. The headline read, "Prominent DC developer accused of psychological manipulation in family trust case." The article was careful, focused on the professional ethics violations rather than family drama, but it included enough details to be damaging. Dr. Pemberton's practice, the undisclosed financial relationship, the coordination between financial advisors and medical professionals to influence a patient's behavior. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 of Dr. Pemberton's patients had contacted Rebecca to report similar experiences. By Wednesday, the Virginia Board of Psychology had opened a formal investigation. By Thursday, Gregory Steinberg had been placed on administrative leave by his firm pending their internal review. My father tried a different approach. Friday morning, a man knocked on my motel room door. He introduced himself as Detective James Whitfield, Metropolitan Police Department, 15 years on the force. Mr. Whitmore, I need to ask you some questions about documents taken from your father's office. I didn't take anything that wasn't already about me. Your father is claiming theft of confidential business information. He's filed a police report. The folder contained my personal information. A life plan created about me without my knowledge or consent. That's not his property. He's also expressed concern about your mental state. Says you've been acting erratically, making false accusations against family members and medical professionals. I handed Detective Whitfield Rebecca's business card. Everything I've done has been under legal counsel. If my father wants to pursue theft charges, he can do it in civil court. But he won't, because that would require him to explain in a public courtroom exactly what was in that folder and why he had it. The detective looked at the card, then at me. Look, I've seen family money disputes before. They get ugly. But making accusations of psychological abuse, filing professional complaints, talking to the press, that's a nuclear option. It's the only option when the conventional ones have been controlled by the people you're trying to escape from. He studied me for a long moment. You really walking away from all of it? The money, the family, everything? Yes. That takes guts, or insanity. Haven't figured out which yet. Probably both. He smiled slightly. Your father has a lot of connections in this city. A lot of people who owe him favors. Be careful. Thank you for the warning. He left. No arrest, no charges. My father had been testing the waters, seeing if he could use law enforcement to intimidate me. It hadn't worked. The next week, the Virginia Board of Psychology announced they were expanding their investigation into Dr. Pemberton's practice. 4 more patients had come forward. The Washington Post ran a follow-up article. Dr. Pemberton issued a statement through her attorney denying all allegations and claiming patient confidentiality prevented her from defending herself fully. David Kim leaked the payment records showing the $25,000 annual consulting fees. Dr. Pemberton's attorney stopped returning calls. By the end of the month, she'd surrendered her license rather than face a formal hearing. Gregory Steinberg was quietly terminated from his firm. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone in the D.C. financial community knew why. The Bar Association investigation was still ongoing, but the damage to his reputation was done. My father's firm started losing contracts. 3 major development deals fell through in 6 weeks. The official explanations varied: financing issues, zoning complications, but Rebecca heard through her contacts that several potential partners were suddenly concerned about the family situation and worried about reputational risk. I got a job washing dishes at a restaurant in Alexandria. $9 an hour, evening shifts, no benefits. The owner, a 60-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Thomas Nguyen, hired me on the spot when I showed up asking for work. You ever washed dishes before? He asked. No. You look like you've never worked hard a day in your life. Soft hands, expensive haircut. Probably accurate. Why you want this job? Because it's the only thing I'm qualified for that doesn't require references from my family. He laughed. Family trouble? I understand family trouble. Okay, you start tonight, but you work hard or you're gone. I don't care about your story. I worked hard. Harder than I'd ever worked at the firm where I'd shuffled papers and attended meetings. My hands cracked and bled from the industrial soap. My feet ached from standing for 8-hour shifts. My back hurt from bending over sinks. It was the most honest work I'd ever done. I moved from the motel to a basement efficiency apartment in Arlington. $450 a month, shared bathroom down the hall, hot plate instead of a stove. My neighbor was a grad student who practiced violin at 2 a.m. The guy across the hall sold what was probably drugs, but minded his own business. I'd gone from a luxury high-rise to this in 6 weeks, and I slept better than I had in years. Rebecca called me in early December. The Bar Association concluded their investigation. Gregory Steinberg is being formally censured and suspended for 18 months. It's not a permanent disbarment, but his career in wealth management is effectively over. Good. And Michael, there's something else. Your father's firm is being audited. It seems some of the development deals he structured involved questionable trust fund distributions. When we exposed the manipulation in your trust, it raised questions about whether similar tactics were used with other family members and business partners. The IRS is involved now. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a distant sense of acknowledgement. He did this to himself. He did. But I'm calling because his attorney reached out. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? They're offering you a settlement. $1 million, paid out over 5 years, in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and dropping all public discussion of the case. They want to buy my silence. Yes. What did you tell them? That I'd present the offer to you. But Michael, I need to be honest. $1 million would change your life. You could go back to school, start a business, build something independently. The NDA would restrict what you say publicly, but it wouldn't erase what's already happened. The complaints are filed, the investigations are complete. You've already won in the ways that matter. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. No. You're sure? They stole 8 years of my life. They manipulated my education, my career, my relationships, my sense of self. They treated me like a development project instead of a human being. $1 million doesn't fix that. And signing an NDA means they get to control the narrative, claim it was all a misunderstanding, move on with their reputation partially intact. They're not going to make this offer again. I don't want their money, Rebecca. I've never wanted their money. I want my life, and that's not for sale. She was quiet for a moment. You're either the most principled person I've ever met or the most stubborn. Can it be both? She laughed. I'll tell them you declined. Christmas came. I worked double shifts at the restaurant, making holiday pay, $13 an hour, washing dishes while families celebrated. Thomas asked me once if I had somewhere to go. Family stuff is complicated, I said. He nodded, understanding everything and asking nothing more. New Year's Eve, I walked along the Potomac by myself, watching fireworks reflect off the water. My phone buzzed. Natalie. First contact since I'd left. The text read, I'm sorry. You were right about everything. I'm calling off the wedding. My father is furious, but I can't do this anymore. I hope you're okay. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, I hope you find what you're looking for. Really. She responded, I think I need to figure out what I'm looking for first, like you did. Thank you for that. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. January brought unexpected news. A journalist from the Washington Post, Elena Vasquez, wanted to do a feature story. The ethics violations case has raised larger questions about how wealthy families use financial control as a parenting tool, she explained when we met at a coffee shop. I'm working on a piece about psychological coercion in high-net-worth families. Would you be willing to talk on the record? My father's attorneys will say I'm making it up. I have corroboration. 7 other people from similar backgrounds have come forward with comparable stories. Trust funds with behavioral conditions, therapists who report to parents, financial advisors who monitor spending patterns. You're not alone in this. 7 people? So far. Your case went public, which gave others permission to speak up. There's a pattern here, a whole system of control that operates in these circles. I thought about the folder in my father's desk, the 10-year plan, the rated list of wives, the casual precision with which they'd engineered my entire existence. What do you need from me? Your story, details, documentation. I want to expose how this works, so other people trapped in these situations know they're not crazy. All right, I said. Let's do it. The article ran in March. Front page of the style section, The Golden Cage, How Wealthy Families Use Money as Control. My story was the centerpiece, but Elena had found 5 others willing to speak on the record. A woman whose parents had used her trust fund to force her out of a same-sex relationship. A man whose family had conditioned his inheritance on taking over the family business. A woman who'd discovered her therapist was reporting to her father about her political views. The pattern was undeniable. Trust funds with subjective compliance clauses, financial advisors who monitored rather than managed, medical professionals who reported rather than treated. A whole infrastructure of control disguised as family wealth management. The response was massive. The article went viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times. Support groups formed online. Law firms started specializing in trust independence cases. 3 states introduced legislation to regulate conditional trust fund practices and require disclosure of third-party financial relationships in therapeutic settings. Dr. Pemberton became a case study in professional ethics courses. Gregory Steinberg's firm implemented new fiduciary duty protocols. And my father's company quietly settled 4 lawsuits from family members who'd discovered similar manipulation in their own trust structures. I didn't follow most of it closely. I was too busy learning to live on my own terms. I enrolled in community college in April, taking business classes and discovering I actually enjoyed accounting when I was doing it, because I wanted to, not because someone had decided it was part of my life plan. I got promoted to line cook at the restaurant. Thomas said I had talent, which meant more coming from him than any VP promotion ever had from my father. I started dating a woman I met in my statistics class. Her name was Melissa Chang. She was 32, getting a 2nd degree after leaving an abusive marriage and working 2 jobs to pay for it. On our 3rd date, she asked about my family. It's complicated, I said. They controlled my money to control my life. I walked away. Did you lose everything? Everything except myself, which turned out to be the only thing that mattered. She understood. Not because she'd lived exactly my situation, but because she'd lived her own version of it. Control through money, control through fear, control through manipulation, different mechanisms, same prison. We talked for hours about freedom and fear and what it means to choose your own life. In May, Rebecca called with final news. Your father's firm filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The IRS audit uncovered systematic misuse of trust funds across multiple accounts. The fines alone are in the millions. Combined with the lost contracts and legal fees, Whitmore Development is functionally dissolved. How's my father? According to courthouse records, he's selling assets to cover debts. The club membership is gone. The Georgetown house is on the market. Your mother filed for legal separation last week. And my trust fund? Frozen pending resolution of the bankruptcy proceedings. You won't see any of it for years, if ever. Good. Good? It was never mine, Rebecca. It was leverage. As long as it existed, there was always the possibility of going back, of being pulled into the orbit. This way it's clean. Done. Over. You're a rare person, Michael. I'm just someone who'd rather be poor and free than rich and owned. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. So do I. June marked 1 year since I'd discovered the email that changed everything. I'd gone from a VP at a multi-million-dollar firm to a line cook making $32,000 a year, from a luxury apartment to a basement efficiency, from a trust fund to a checking account that sometimes went negative on rent day, from an arranged engagement to a real relationship built on honesty instead of compatibility ratings. I'd lost everything my family had built for me, and I'd gained everything they'd tried to prevent: agency, autonomy, authenticity, the ability to fail on my own terms, the ability to succeed for my own reasons, the ability to choose. I was 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was actually living. Thomas promoted me to assistant manager in August. The restaurant was small, the pay was modest, but it was mine. My success or failure, my effort or laziness, my choices. Melissa and I moved in together in September. A one-bedroom apartment in Arlington, splitting the $700 rent, sharing a bathroom and a kitchen, and a life we were building together from scratch. No profiles, no ratings, no strategic family connections. Just two people who'd both escaped different kinds of cages and decided to be free together. In October, Elena Vasquez published a follow-up article tracking the impact of the original story. 12 states had passed some form of trust fund transparency legislation. The American Psychological Association had issued new guidelines for therapists treating adult patients with family wealth dynamics. 3 major financial firms had revised their fiduciary duty standards. And somewhere in all of that, buried in the statistics and policy changes, was my story. The story of a man who'd realized money was being used to keep him compliant, not secure. I never spoke to my father again. Occasionally, I'd hear updates through the legal network, the bankruptcy proceedings, the asset sales, the public fall from grace. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no anger, no vindication. Just a distant recognition that he'd built his entire identity on control, and when that control slipped, there was nothing underneath. My mother tried to reach out once, 6 months after the separation. A letter forwarded through Rebecca's office. It was 3 pages of justification and recrimination, explaining how everything they'd done had been for my own good, how I'd thrown away opportunities people would kill for, how I was making a terrible mistake that I'd regret for the rest of my life. I read it once and threw it away. She still didn't understand. Probably never would. You can't explain freedom to someone who thinks love and control are the same thing. I turned 30 in November. Melissa threw me a small party at the restaurant after closing. Just a few co-workers, some classmates from community college, Rebecca and David Kim, who'd become friends rather than just attorneys. There was cheap champagne and grocery store cake, and it was the best birthday I'd ever had. Not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. No strategic guest list, no networking opportunities, no family obligations, no performance requirements. Just people who liked me for who I was, not what I represented or what I could provide. Thomas gave a toast. To Michael, who came here a year ago looking lost and soft, now he's just lost. Everyone laughed. But seriously, this kid works harder than anyone I've ever hired. And he's honest. In this business, in this city, honest is rare. So we're lucky to have him. Melissa squeezed my hand under the table. I looked around the room at these people who knew me, actually knew me, and realized this was what I'd been searching for without knowing it. Not wealth or status or approval, just authenticity. Just the ability to be seen for who I actually was rather than who someone wanted me to be. December brought closure in an unexpected form. The Virginia Board of Psychology issued their final ruling on Dr. Pemberton. License revoked permanently. Findings of gross ethical violations published in the public record. She'd built a practice on betrayal, and it had cost her everything. Gregory Steinberg settled with the Bar Association. Permanent suspension, required to notify any future employers of the ethics violations. His career in finance was over, and the IRS concluded their investigation of Whitmore Development. My father was personally liable for $2.3 million in penalties and back taxes. The life he'd built on control and manipulation had collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. People asked me if I felt vindicated. I didn't. Vindication implies you were fighting to prove something. I wasn't fighting to prove anything. I was just trying to survive, to escape, to exist independently. The consequences my father and his co-conspirators faced weren't my revenge. They were just the natural result of their own actions catching up with them. On Christmas Eve, I worked the dinner shift at the restaurant. We were packed, families celebrating, couples on dates, people who'd rather eat out than cook. I worked the line, coordinating orders, managing timing, making sure everything came out right. It was stressful and satisfying in equal measure. During a brief lull around 9 p.m., Thomas pulled me aside. Next year, I'm promoting you to full manager. $40,000 salary, benefits, profit sharing. You've earned it. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Say yes and get back to work. We have tickets piling up. I said yes. $40,000. 4 years ago, that would have been less than a quarter of what I was making. 4 years ago, I would have considered it failure. Now, it felt like freedom. Because it was mine. Earned through my work, my choices, my effort. Not given conditionally, not tied to compliance, not leverage for control, just honest payment for honest work. That night, walking home through Arlington in the cold, I thought about the email that had started everything, the forwarded message chain I was never supposed to see, the casual discussion of compliance metrics and behavioral modification that had shattered my entire understanding of my life. If it hadn't been for Gregory Steinberg's late-night mistake, I'd probably still be there, still living in the luxury apartment, still working at the firm, still engaged to Natalie, still perfectly controlled. I'd be on schedule for the 2027 marriage, the first child planning discussions in 2028, the partnership track and family integration complete. I'd be successful, wealthy, secure, and completely owned. The thought made me physically ill. I'd rather be walking home to a one-bedroom apartment in December cold, worried about making rent, than living in that golden cage. I'd rather struggle with authenticity than succeed with compliance. Melissa was waiting when I got home, studying for finals. She looked up when I came in. "How was work?" "Busy. Thomas promoted me." She jumped up, hugged me hard. "That's amazing. We should celebrate." "We're broke until I get my next paycheck. Then we'll celebrate with the good ramen instead of the cheap stuff." We made 99-cent ramen, splurged on eggs to add protein, and ate it sitting on our secondhand couch watching a movie we'd streamed for free. It was perfect. Not because it was luxurious or impressive or enviable, but because it was real. Because every element of it, the apartment, the food, the relationship, the job, the life, was something I'd chosen independently, built authentically, earned honestly. No one had selected it for me, structured it for me, or conditioned it on my compliance. A year and a half after I walked out of my father's office, I was assistant manager at a restaurant, living in a modest apartment, dating a woman I'd met in statistics class, and taking community college courses toward a degree I might not finish. By every metric my family used to measure success, I was a catastrophic failure. By the only metric that actually mattered, the ability to live authentically on my own terms, I was exactly where I needed to be. People sometimes asked if I regretted it, walking away from millions of dollars, from a guaranteed career, from a life of comfort and security. The answer was always no, because I'd learned something my father never understood. Money isn't security when it comes with conditions. Compliance isn't success when it costs you your autonomy. And a cage is still a cage, even when it's gilded. I realized money was being used to keep me compliant, not secure. That realization cost me everything I thought I had. And it gave me everything I actually needed. That's not a fair trade or a happy ending or a moral victory. It's just the truth. And unlike every other part of my old life, at least this truth is mine. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.